that don't know, or see, well, this is the Mildenhall hub, or community, I should say. Um, I'm Martin Sexton. I lead computer science at Mildenhall College Academy. We're a Key Stage 3 to Key Stage 5 school, and we've been delivering kind of the computing curriculum ever since I started there, and that was kind of my role about 6 years ago, to introduce kind of computing a lot more than just the ICT elements. I'm a Barefoot ambassador. Some of you may have heard of the Barefoot scheme. It's a really good scheme for free resources for primary school students, but it's also got some really good resources for secondary. I tend to use some of them all the way up to Key Stage 5, and I said that they're all free, and there's some really good quality resources there, but I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. I'm also a digital schoolhouse lead teacher, which is possibly a little bit lesser known than some of the other kind of schemes that are around. But again, it's aimed more at primary school students, and looking at getting people in the classroom from secondary schools to teach in primary school lessons, and show and work with primary school teachers how to teach the lessons, and then giving them some resources to then carry on with those lessons later on. And again, I can talk a little bit more about that one later on. I'm also an NCC facilitator, and we'll be hopefully starting to do some training. I think some of the training courses are going to be going online fairly soon, which obviously means that we'll have some even more CPD to be getting into while we're closed and not able to go in. So that's me. It'd be quite nice to be able to hear from some of you, introduce where you're from, and kind of what you do and your role in your organisation. So I'll try and hopefully go through the list, although it doesn't appear to have got everyone listed for me. So at the top we've got, is it Adrian?
Adrian, yeah.
Oh.
Hi, morning. So I'm a computing teacher at Boulder, which is in West London. We're a startup school, so we only have year 7 and year 8. But I'm the computing lead as well, and we will be growing up into, I think they're planning on having a sixth form as well, so we're just building year on year.
Oh, brilliant. Excellent. Then we've got Ben. Oh, I think you're muted.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, can. Yeah.
Oh, hi. Yeah, I work in up north in Doncaster. This year I decided to take a year out and to learn computer science. So it's developing my knowledge in the theory and programming, so I can deliver computer science at Key Stage 4 next year.
Excellent. Then we've got Danielle.
Hi, I'm Danielle, and I work in a school in Northampton. I've just lost my head of computing. I line manage computing, business and economics, so I've been asked to go on the course and see if I can get some curriculum planning going before we get into September.
Brilliant. Oh, then we've got Helen, Helen Pilfold, that is.
Hi, good morning, everybody. I'm Helen, and I'm in Grimsby in North East Lincolnshire. I work in a primary school. I've only ever taught foundation stage, but I've been given the computing lead for the school and given the task of revising the computing curriculum, producing a new scheme of work for the school. So I would desperately need some help.
Excellent. And then there's Helen Rutter as well.
Yeah, so I work in Lincoln as well. Actually, I'm in a primary school in Lincoln. We've got 10 classes, so I'm computing lead for that primary school. I teach predominantly year 5 and 6, but I have to plan computing for the whole school. So yeah, just want some extra support planning, really. Ideas you guys have got for me.
Excellent. Well, hopefully we can help out. James?
Can you hear me now?
Yep, can hear you.
Hello, so my name's James. I used to be a computer science teacher and sort of worked my way through that. I currently work for sort of a 21 school multi-academy trust, and we're just looking at doing trying to develop computing across the trust really more, and particularly in primary as well. So that's why I'm really interested in linking in with the group, because we just want to do that. We want to develop our computing and work with teachers and to be able to do that.
Excellent. And then we've got Matt.
Hi, yeah. So I used to be a computer science teacher for 20 years in the northwest around Cheshire and South Manchester. And then this September, I took up a role working for the Raspberry Pi Foundation, working on creating the online courses that you may have seen through the National Centre for Computing Education. So we're linked in with the NCCE. And also with the Raspberry Pi Foundation, there's other parts of the foundation that produces resources for all key stages that hopefully we'll take a look at today. And yeah, I'm here today just to see basically what's going on the ground and how we can computer science teachers at this moment.
Excellent. And Matt's got something for us later on as well. We've got Neil as well.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes. I'm based down in Somerset, head of computing for Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4. I've also newly appointed a primary computing person. So I'm just gathering resources to help assist the primary phase, and also for me for Key Stage 3 as well, really. So yeah, it's lovely and sunny down in Somerset, lovely clear blue sky. So yeah, all good.
Excellent. And then is it Sharifa?
Hi, morning. Hi, Martin.
Morning.
So my name's Sharifa. I'm one of the NCC subject matter expert. I used to be a secondary school teacher for about 8-9 years, and then for the last, for about 6 years, I was based with primary school as a curriculum advisor for a local authority. But yeah, for the last year and a bit, I've been with the NCC. So I just wanted to just see what these sessions are about, and also to help me with my role as well.
Excellent. Well, it's good to have you here. We've got Wendy.
There we go. Sorry. Just scribbling notes about what everyone was saying. Yes, hi everyone. So I was a primary school teacher for 20 years, leading computing. I'm based in Redhill in Surrey. I now work for Computing at School full time, and I manage the communities across London and the east of England. I was making copious notes about what everyone was saying because I thought it'd be interesting to draw your attention to some of our other online sessions that are happening. So for those of you that are secondary, if you're interested in Python programming, there's an hour session this afternoon at 4 that's looking at Python with Minecraft. And also the primary specialists, we're running a session tomorrow morning at 11, and that's looking at Scratch, so developing your skills with that if you want to get more confident. And we're going to be using the Barefoot Computing resources, which are all free. So how's that for an advert? Free training, free resources. So that's just a couple of the sessions, but there's obviously all our sessions now, all our community meetings online. So please keep looking at the CAS website, where all the events are going to be advertised. And also, if you're not aware, we have 2 Facebook groups now, CAS Primary and CAS Secondary, and all our meetings will also be posted on there. So a lot to get the plug in, but it's nice to see everyone.
Definitely a plug away, Wendy. And then we've got Angela.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Hi, I live in Red Hill. Hi, Wendy. But I teach in South London. I'm a primary teacher in South London.
Brilliant.
And that's about all. I'm currently managing a 1-year-old at the same time, so I do apologise if I drop in and out.
That's all right. And then Krista.
Hello, good morning. I'm in a school that's actually local to Martin, in primary school, and I lead computing there. And we're just looking at updating our planning. So yeah, that's why I've joined today.
Brilliant. Nice to hear you again. And then we've got just someone that says Mrs. G.
Oh, that's me. It's Diana. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can, yeah.
Yeah, I'm Diana. I'm from Cumbria. I'm computing lead in a very small rural primary school, and I teach from nursery up to year 6. We don't actually have a scheme of work that we follow. We tend to dip in and out, things like barefoot, which obviously anything free is really good for a small school.
Brilliant. Well, hopefully it'll be nice and useful then.
Thanks for your help for getting me on today.
Not a problem. And Rachel.
Yeah, hi. I'm based in Lincolnshire, an SME for the National Centre for Computing and CAS community leader. So this is the first online CAS meeting. So I kind of just wanted to jump in and see how it's done, really.
Really well. I wouldn't say this is definitely the right model to follow, but I'm sure you'll find some bits that are useful.
Cool, thank you.
And then there's one that's just computing, which is Hunsrey Park. Can you hear me at all?
There you go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can, yeah.
Hi, yeah, I'm Janine. I'm a year 3 teacher and I've just been made a computing lead within the last couple of months. We use Rising Stars. Not many people are very happy with using it. So they're gifting me the job of sorting out the curriculum. So that's why I thought I'd come and join and get some ideas.
Brilliant. Is there anyone that I've missed at all? I think I might have got everyone, but I'm not 100% sure. Take that silence as we managed to get everyone introduced. So it's really good to hear that we've got such a wide spread of people from all different places, and hopefully that can only just help the meeting. Please feel free at any point just to share any ideas that you might have. I'll looking to go through each key stage. I think even kind of outside your key stage, I think it's quite nice to be able to see what they need to know, so that you kind of know where they're coming from, where they need to be going to. And so if you've got any other ideas, even if you don't necessarily teach that key stage, I think it'll be really good to be able to hear from you and to share those ideas. So the plan really is just to start to look at the national curriculum and what it means, and then to talk about some kind of ideas and look at some resources that we can then use to try and kind of meet all of those targets, if you like. And Matt's going to talk to us about some of the bits that obviously they're doing at Raspberry Pi as well, and I'm sure lots of you will have lots of other ideas on top of that. So I will make start. Please feel free that if you need to disappear, go get refreshments or nip to the toilet or anything, just go through. The session is getting recorded, so you can always catch up any bits that you do miss out, and then obviously ask any questions later on if there's anything that you want to clarify at all. So see, for key stage 1, obviously it's quite a limited list for that one, and it's not necessarily that extensive with it. The main bits in there, and I've numbered the points from the national curriculum, so this just comes from the government's website. and I've just numbered those just to make it easier to refer back to them later on. So just looking at being able to understand what algorithms are, being able to look at how programs are executed by following kind of precise and unambiguous instructions within that. Being able to create and debug very simple programs. So looking at kind of very simple, probably linear, especially year one instruction sets where they're just going from one to the next instruction. And using logical reasoning to predict what might happen with simple programs. So looking at getting them to kind of understand what a program may do. Looking at being able to use technology to create digital content, being able to store it and get it back as well. Looking at recognising common uses of information with technology beyond the school. So there's a quite good little idea that I managed to find for that one, which is quite good for looking at into that. And using technology safely, respectfully, and keeping personal information private, and those sorts of things, that the kind of e-safety area, if you like. So obviously I'm not a primary school teacher. This is one of the areas I had to do a little bit of research to try and come up with a few ideas. So I'm more than happy for anyone else to kind of share some of their ideas. But I've kind of split it up into the three strands, if you like, the computer science element, the ICT element, and then the digital literacy element. So computer science relates to points 1, 2, and 3. So things such as kind of unplugged algorithms, so they don't necessarily have to be looking at using a computer straight away. It's good to kind of get them to do things that don't necessarily use computers, so they can start to get to grips with what we mean by instructions and algorithms and so on. So things like mazes that students guide each other through, and so you have like a start point and an end point in the classroom or something, and they have to write a set of instructions to guide someone through there without falling over tables and things like that. Really easy to set up and that sort of thing. Using B-bots and fake bots. So fake bots come from Barefoot. They're just a paper version of the B-bots that they can use for practicing. So if you don't have lots of B-bots around the school, if you don't have any at all, you can use those to write algorithms and things like creating shapes and numbers and letters and so on. Something that's probably worth looking into, it's something that I really do find useful when teaching anything computer science related, is looking at a model called PRIM, which is looking at how you can show and teach programming in a really structured way, which really does meet the curriculum in terms of 1, 2, and 3 on here, because the emphasis initially is on predicting what they think a behaviour of a programme would do. So obviously straight away you're hitting the third national curriculum point in there. You then get them to run a programme that you've given them, and then they can start to investigate it, and you can give them simple questions. There might be an error with it, so that's where the debugging can come into it. And then once they've done that, they can maybe have a go at modifying or maybe making their own little program, an algorithm, to then do something a little bit different, but still using the same techniques. And so by using PRIM, you're hitting kind of points 1, 2, and 3 straight away. There's not been much research around it. It was some research done by Sue Sentence and Jane Waite, who kind of are the main ones that have kind of put all this together, and you can do a lot of research about it. But theirs is more aimed, I think, at secondary, but they're looking at how it can work in primary schools as well. So if you do have a look at doing it, I can show you some resources later on of how we set it up, and you can kind of see it in action a little bit. But obviously, just bear in mind that ours is tailored towards secondary school. on the ICT front, so kind of the bullet point 4, if you like, things like creating topic posters, making sure they're using appropriate software for that one, looking at presentations, again using appropriate software, potentially some 3D design. I don't know obviously how much they could do with that, because obviously, like I said, I'm not a Key Stage 1 specialist, but things like SketchUp are fairly straightforward to use, and there are free licenses for that. Use writing stories, so if they're doing some written work, you can get them to type up a neat version of it once they've written it in the class or something on those lines. I think the ICT element, especially, can be really cross-curricular, and so trying to link it to your topic and so on as you go through. Obviously, the really important bit, I think, is to get them used to saving and retrieving work. I think from a secondary school perspective, we have a lot of students coming in where that hasn't necessarily kind of been embedded in straight away, and I think getting them used to doing that early on, however you can do it, is really useful to do. And then the digital literacy side of things, so that's kind of 4.5 and 6, getting them using search engines to find images and text. So obviously when they're doing their presentations, just making sure that they know about kind of the best ways to search for things. There's a search engine that's been designed for students called Swiggle, which is based on Google, but I can show you that later on as well when we look at some of the resources. And kind of use of technology around the home, you could get them to do some kind of diary task when they're at home, looking at kind of where they use computers or any kind of technology kind of on a daily basis, which could be a little bit fun to do that. And again, that could then be put into some kind of maybe presentation or onto a poster, and so you can then tie them in together. And I think trying to tie the work in as much as possible with what you have to do normally will kind of make your life a lot easier as well. I don't know if there is anyone from the Key Stage 1 kind of background that's got any other ideas of kinds of things that they might do in each of those strands at all. No, nothing that anyone thinks they could add any ideas. Like I said, I'm definitely not primary. When I do the digital workshop, digital schoolhouse workshops, like anything Key Stage 1 scares me.
How about nursery rhymes for algorithms?
Yeah.
Like Hickory Dickory Dock, the mouse ran up the clock.
Yeah, definitely.
What time was it? And stuff like that. I used to train.
Yeah, no, I think that the cross-curricular links, as much as possible, I think is a good way of kind of tying it all in without being kind of too scary and being able to do it in that way. And I think anything along those lines is definitely going to be a useful way to kind of set it up. Anyone else at all?
I was just going to say, for people who are looking for sort of things that they can use that are free, it's worth going back to Barefoot if you've not looked at it before, or if you have in the past, because a lot of the resources are unplugged on there, so you don't actually need any computing equipment to sort of teach the beginnings of understanding of programming, and you can literally print them and go. You know, these activities, they come with all the resources already made. They're very simple to use. Some of them are just done with paper and pencils when we are back in the classroom, but equally you could send them out to the children. They could do them at home, you know, with their siblings or with their parents. And some of the programming activities on there use B-bots, which a lot of schools had in the past and still have in their schools. So you don't have to, you know, putting a huge amount of investment in if you don't have any money to spare for computing. So it's definitely worth primary teachers having a look at that to support their curriculum. So it's fantastic. I used a lot of the Barefoot resources when I taught in Key Stage 1. I was a 3 to 8 was my specialism. So yeah, it was fantastic.
No, I will be going through and showing the Barefoot resources later on as well. But I think it is kind of the Unplugged, I think, kind of Key Stage 1 is all it really needs to go through. If you can introduce the BE bots as well, or something similar that you might have, then it's a kind of a bonus. But I think you can hit all 3 parts of that national curriculum without really touching a computer or doing any serious programming in Key Stage 1, which I think is quite nice to be able to do.
Just also want to, sorry if my camera just switched the other way, seems to, like randomly flicks round. I'm back now. The other thing I just wanted to say was thank you for pointing out the importance of the IT skills, really, and ensuring that primary teachers explicitly teach the saving of work and retrieving it again. And I think certainly from my own experience, my school, we definitely moved away from that. And I think when the programming came in, that kind of dominated. And I think it's about getting that balance again of the 3 different areas and making sure they have equal weighting in your curriculum and you are teaching those explicit skills. So it's really useful to hear that from a secondary teacher's perspective.
Yeah.
And
I mean,
primary teachers to do that. Thank you.
Especially recently, I think we've noticed in the last kind of year or 2, the year 7's kind of coming up to us. There's been a definite drop in it, and I think it is because of this computer science push, and primary school teachers that have got on kind of this idea that it's just about the computer science aspect. And I know initially Barefoot was really just about the computer science, but obviously they're now branching out with a lot more of the kind of digital literacy and ICT skills. I think some of it isn't necessarily teachers' fault. I think some of it comes down to the technology that's been purchased. So I know a lot of schools went down the iPad routes and things like that, which then makes it very difficult to teach kind of storing and retrieving the content, because I see iPads are not particularly well managed in terms of you being able to do it. They tend to do a lot of the managing themselves, and they just open the app and there's the files, if you like, rather than having to create their own folders and look at saving work with the sensible names or choosing the right program, because I think a lot of the time they've already been told what program to be using, but not necessarily been thinking about why to use it and those sorts of things. So yeah, I think the 3 different strands are really important, and I think you can tie them all in. So when we teach it, the ICT and the digital literacy will always pretty much be taught at the same time, and then likewise there'll be elements of ICT being taught while we're teaching computer science as well, and I think it is really important. Sorry.
I echo that with the iPads, especially in my new school. I found that their ability to type was a lot worse than what I'd experienced before in year 7, and that was very much a case of like their scratch was amazing in comparison to previous schools, but having them log into a laptop to the point where one of my year 7s got so distressed because she had never seen like a device with a keyboard, so she didn't know how to use it. Like, she's so used to touchscreen, and I think maybe just increasing their exposure, if the whole school has iPads, just kind of, you know, make them aware that there are other devices. They're not always going to be touchscreen. And if you do have laptops or Chromebooks or whatever, a bit of touch typing, I think, will go a long way. I'm not expecting to be able to touch type, but to be able to type just a little bit better than the one finger will really help their secondary.
No, there's a lot of free online tools for touch typing as well, isn't there?
I think it's the best.
Yeah, I definitely echo that. We had one year 7 student come in this year who in their first lesson tried to hold the mouse the wrong way round, so the buttons were on their palm. That was slightly amusing, but obviously it just comes from not having that exposure to using a mouse, and I think where possible, I think kind of strategies should be looking to try and get a range of devices in there. I think, I don't know if it says it this one, but definitely in the next in Key Stage 2 is about using a range of devices where possible. So not just iPads, looking at having maybe some laptops or some desktops if possible that can be used at some point. Has anyone else got anything to add for Key Stage 1 at all?
Are you just focusing on Key Stage 1? Or are you going to be looking at?
We're going to move on to so early years. I haven't gone.
Most people forget early years when they're doing their curriculum plans.
Yeah, I think early years to a certain extent, because there's no, like, the national curriculum doesn't actually cover that to a certain extent. I think the similar sorts of things do apply. I think a lot of the unplugged, as much as possible, looking at creating some instructions, whether it is just getting them to guide each other around and where possible, or those sorts of things whenever they're doing. Obviously, early years is even more scary than I think year 1 and year 2, but just kind of bringing those bits in and being able to use kind of simple bits of software as well is definitely it can definitely be tailored to that one, just kind of brought down to their level a little bit more.
Martin, can I just answer that question? Sorry, I missed who asked that question. But one of my community leaders called Rachel Coulthart, who she leads a community in Stevenage. She did a fantastic presentation on computing in the early years, which is all practical ideas. So thank you for raising the issue of early years and computing. So that's something that I can definitely talk to her about and ask whether she can run an online session and just talk through that presentation that she gave. I think it's one of the best presentations that I've ever seen on early years computing, and it's just full of really simple ideas that are perfect for early years, because she's an early years specialist. So I can certainly follow up on that, and we can offer that if that's something that's wanted. Yeah.
No, I'd definitely be interested in that as well, Wendy, because
we'll arrange that.
the number of schools I go into and they do talk about the early years, and I'm just like, well, I don't really have that understanding of it, and so yeah, I know I'd definitely find that useful as well.
Can I come in?
Of course you can, yeah.
I've recently, this last 12 months, we give our early years, we just have the desktop set up and just get them used to using a mouse and having that hand-eye coordination.
That's brilliant.
Because I find that when they move up into year 1, if they haven't had that experience with a mouse, you waste, well, not wasting, but you're using sort of nearly a whole term.
Yeah.
Getting them just used to using it. So we just have them set up and they just come and go as they want to. And there's some super software out there. We subscribe to Purple Mash, which is much better lower end because it's more geared, I think, for early years and Key Stage 1. And then we've also got some coder pillars, which are like a step below the B-bots.
Yeah.
Which they love, and they can just put the blocks together and do very, very simple programming, but they love it.
Yeah, no, actually, that's something that I'd completely forgotten about. I know that the coder pillars, there was, I think it's the University of Hertfordshire did have some that they used to loan out. I don't know whether they still do at all, but they do those kinds of things. It's a little bit like the B-bots, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you just join the instructions together instead of programming them into it by pressing the buttons. But yes, no, anything like that I think is really good.
It's just introducing them, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'd say.
Yeah, no, definitely. Anyone else at all? No. So I'll go on to the Key Stage 2 part. Obviously, this one really just kind of goes on from it and looking at going into a little bit more depth. You've still got the first 3 which is looking at being able to kind of design, write, debug programs that looking at specific goals, whether it's controlling kind of physical systems, so things like kind of the B bots and that sort of thing at the lower end. There's a lot that you can do with kind of Scratch now as well, where you can program other physical systems as well. Looking at really starting to, I think, coming into the understanding of the kind of computational thinking terms, things like decomposing the problem into smaller parts, looking at abstraction to find the important information for a problem, and those sorts of things. I think really kind of starting to understand what they mean, and not necessarily just us using them with the students. Looking at kind of more complex programs now, where you've got kind of sequence selection and repetition in your programs, and looking at how you can use those kind of more advanced constructs in there, looking at being able to store data in your program and using variables, using input and output in there as well. So obviously starting to build up kind of more complex programs, I'd say. And then looking again at using the logical reasoning to work out how algorithms work and look at detecting errors and so on. And again, with kind of that area, I think Prim really does work and hit all those 3 points. So then you've got kind of this extra one where you're looking at how devices then start to communicate. So this kind of building upon the one where it's just looking at how devices are used at home, and looking at how does the internet work and being able to talk about that. Looking at how computers will be able to talk to each other and those sorts of things as well. Looking at using search technologies effectively, so kind of using Google properly, and looking at maybe using some of their tools to narrow things down. As I said, Google Home just lit up. And then looking at kind of how the results are selected and how they're ranked, and how you should go through and choose them. Then you've got your software, your ICT type things again, and here looking at collecting data and things like that as well. So on top of just kind of the creative kind of software as well. And then using the technology kind of safely again, looking at what is acceptable. So not necessarily just how they keep themselves safe, but also what is it okay to do when they're on the internet. And so things like using social media responsibly as they get towards the older years. Obviously, most of them they shouldn't have, but I think they should kind of be finding out about the things that they should be doing and not doing when they do start to it, because I think a lot of kind of definitely year 5, 6 students are starting to get their social media even when they shouldn't necessarily have it. So again, I've kind of split that up into the 3 different strands. So again, I think nothing beats looking at unplugged algorithms to begin with. Here you can kind of introduce some more maybe complex type things. So if things like making toast and tea are kind of classic unplugged examples. We do it with making paper airplanes as well. Storyboards, if they're planning some kind of story. Obviously those are algorithms as well, and there's lots of there in there. I'd probably say kind of lower key stage 2, you could kind of use Scratch Junior. It's a little bit simpler, which you can use for reading and writing algorithms. But then kind of as you go up key stage 2, I'd definitely be looking at using Scratch 2 or preferably Scratch 3 for it, and looking at kind of reading and writing those algorithms there. So Scratch 3 has got some add-ons, so if you happen to have some Lego robots at all, you can use your Scratch 3 to program your Lego robot, and there's lots of other modules and things that you can use Scratch for as well, and get that kind of physical computing from the computing, also the computing national curriculum as well. And I think it's the first bullet point. With ICT, again, you've got the same sorts of things as before, so the posters, presentations. I think kind of linking those to topics is kind of an easy way to go about doing it. But then you've got collecting data and looking at analysing it. So when you're doing a science experiment, if rather than getting them to make their comparisons in an exercise book, you could get them to do it on Excel and have a look at data, and then get Excel to create the graphs for them, and things like that. So they're starting to get used to how computers can be used to help analyse data. I think as much as possible, looking at collaborating, working as well, looking at maybe introducing cloud computing if your school's got signed up to that. So something like Office 365, get them starting to understand how to save and retrieve work from the cloud as well. Working on the same document at the same time when using the cloud document as well can be useful. Understanding how networks are working as well. So that could be things like getting them to act out how data might be sent from one place to another one. You can link that into kind of how postal system works and things like that. Obviously, the saving and retrieving work is quite important there as well. And then obviously finally you've got the digital literacy elements where you've got the search engine. So here kind of not just kind of finding images, but I'd be looking to try and teach them as to what makes the best results to be looking at, and how you know information is reliable, and things like that. Obviously that using technology, you can look at how that develops, if you like. So they can see in kind of year 1, year 2, if they do a diary then, and then maybe they do another diary in year 5 and 6, and you can get them to see how that's changed over the years. And obviously it will kind of develop as the technology develops. Obviously the acceptable uses of ICT, so not trying to break into someone else's computer and things like that. And kind of how they can act well when they're using social media, and those sorts of things. Again, I don't know if anyone else has got any ideas of kind of things that can go into Key Stage 2 kind of planning age.
I think e-safety, keeping safe online is really crucial at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. And there is lots out there.
There is lots out there, yeah. I think we just need to remember that we need to teach it, really.
Yeah.
And I think some of the resources need updating quite a bit. I was asked to go into a primary school near me. Obviously can't because of the current situation, but I was meant to this term because their year 5s and year 6s, year 5s particularly, have had a lot of problems on TikTok and WhatsApp.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of those sites, they're not age appropriate to be showing the year 5s and 6s. They're kind of more involved in like cyberbullying, whereas I think a lot of the stuff online is more like sexual exploitation for the older years. So it's just kind of like trying to pitch it down a bit, and also be aware that it is year 5s and 6s that are using these apps as well.
Yeah, no, I think it is. I mean, a lot of them, they're not supposed to be, but I think you know with anything, they will have it. And I think that it's about making sure they know kind of the risks and things of using it.
Absolutely.
I think just like with anything, there is an app that our school has recently signed up to, and I keep getting loads of CPD type things and talking about. I'm just trying to find it. I think it's called Safer Schools, and on there they've got lots of different things. And recently there was one on TikTok, and there's various kind of digital safeguarding things that are looking at house party as well. And those sorts of things. So that might be worth. There's a website as well. So if you're interested, look into that one. It looks quite good. Some of the videos that they've got on there.
What's it called again?
So it's called Safer Schools.
Safer Schools.
And Vodafone have also done a digital parenting guide and free resources, and I think it's up to like 300. It might be more than that they send to the school. And I think that could be quite good. We sent out to the parents because I think sometimes it's just as useful to educate the parents as it is the students.
Yeah.
And it's all free.
So
and
who
the
was that,
actual
did you say?
online resources are really good. Pardon?
Who did you say was doing that?
Vodafone.
Oh, brilliant. No, I'll definitely look into that one as well.
Whose plays?
Vodafone. It's called Digital Parenting. Oh, I'll find the link and just post it on the chat.
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely.
They also
got-
supply like leaflets or little booklets to give out to the parents. I think up to 500 per school that you can
Yeah.
actually give out, which is really useful.
Oh, brilliant.
Mm.
I've always used, have you heard of commonsensemedia.org?
Yeah.
That's a good one for parents to go on and see what the latest app or movie or whatever involves.
Yeah, definitely. No, that sounds good.
With regards to schools as well, if you haven't seen, there's a document called Education for a Connected World, which has aims and expectations from EYFS all the way up to 18 years old. It's a really good document that the DFE and their latest guidance have actually suggested to schools. It's a really good document to base your objectives on if you want to have a more thorough online safety document.
Oh, brilliant. No, that sounds
So yeah, I
good.
think it was June last year. It's called Education for a Connected World, but the DFE backed it. It's been funded by loads of like NSPCC and Southwest Grid for Learning and stuff like that. So it's a good basis.
Excellent.
Can I just add to what Rachel has said? They've also introduced the scheme of work, almost like lots of resources. I think it's called Evolve. It's in the beta phase, but if you go on it, if you just put in Evolve, I think, and what you'll find is they've got the presentation, resources, activities, everything in it, and it's an add-on to what Rachel mentioned. Really great.
Brilliant. So if you have got any of these links, at some point, if you can get those to me, and then I'll make sure they get shared out with everyone as well. I'll try and make sure that there's a list of all of these different resources and things that people have been talking about, so that everyone can start to use those and start looking at those as well. Has anyone else got anything to add about Key Stage 2 at all?
Google also do like the Google Legends. I don't know if anybody's heard of that, but there's some quite good e-safety stuff in their material that they give out for free as well.
Yeah, I've gone on one of their courses a couple of months ago. It was really good, and they send out a booklet for every teacher if you want it, and then they've just sent out, I've brought it home with me, a digital wellbeing one as well that they've just launched.
Yeah.
So I'm in the process of looking through that at the minute.
Yeah, it seems quite useful. So, well,
What we did at Key Stage 3, which I think could work for Key Stage 2 as well, is we actually got our local police in to school, and what they did was they set up a chat room, and we told the students that we've set up a chat room for them to talk to another school, and it was actually the police that were talking to them on this chat room that they set up, and they saw how much information that they would like willingly give to this made-up school, and then the police then came in and spoke to them, and they had like Instagrams, like accounts, they had one of the kids' home address, and I think it was really powerful to have someone in a police uniform giving this information, and really made them take it a bit more seriously than just having the people that they see every day standing in front of the classroom. And like our local police, so our work in Ursworth, they've done it for the last couple of years, and they're really, really keen to support. They've done assemblies for us as well, so that could be worth getting like contacts for if you can.
That sounds really good.
Excellent. No, that is good. Brilliant. Anyone got anything else to add at all? Okay, well, hopefully that's obviously lots of good ideas that people can use for primary computing and some of the bits to start to get your head around. What I'm looking at doing afterwards, once we've finished with this meeting, is potentially just getting some primary schools together and then getting the secondary schools together separately, to kind of come up with our own kind of curriculums that we've got that kind of we can work together to build, to kind of maybe share some of the workload as well, and hopefully some of those ideas can be used in that later on as well. So the next part, obviously, Key Stage 3. So Key Stage 3 is obviously there's a lot to it, and in the space we have a 2-year Key Stage 3 at the moment. So within that 2-year Key Stage 3, there's a lot to try and cram in, and so we've got the designing, using, and evaluating computational abstractions that model state and behaviour of real-world problems. So looking at how you can create these computer programs that are going to be looking at some real-world problems as much as possible. Looking at the key algorithms, so looking at understanding searching and sorting and how those can be used, using obviously logical reasoning to compare the different algorithms for the same problem, so giving them multiple algorithms or multiple solutions for one problem and getting them to talk about which is the better way to do it and why they might do that. Getting them to use at least 2 programming languages. Obviously, one of those is being textual. Looking at solving computational problems in that way. Looking at data structures, so starting to look at lists or arrays and how they can be used. Looking at modular programs as well, so using procedures or functions in that as well. Understanding simple Boolean logic, so and or not, looking at binary and how to carry out simple operations, so addition and conversion between binary and decimal numbers. Looking at hardware and software that make up computer systems and obviously how they communicate with each other. Then we've got the storing, or understand how instructions are stored and executed, looking at the different types of data in there and how they're kind of stored on the computer. Looking at creative projects still, so we've still got that part in there. And again, that's kind of going to be very similar to Key Stage 2, but hopefully the end results are going to be a little bit more professional in some cases. Looking at being able to kind of create, reuse, repurpose digital artifacts, looking at the trustworthiness and understanding why you can use some information and you can't necessarily trust other information. And then obviously the safety element in there as well, looking at the inappropriate content as well a lot more and reporting concerns. So obviously, because this is something that I know a little bit more about and I'm a little happier with, and we've got something, I've kind of done this one a little bit differently. So this is kind of our scheme, rough scheme of what we do at the moment. So in year 7, we and in years 8 as well, throughout the school, we use OneNote, which is our online cloud system. And it's kind of like an online exercise book if you haven't used it before, and I find it really, really useful for it. And obviously that kind of hits parts of the national curriculum in terms of using digital content and so on. So we start with looking at some e-safety in year 7, looking at creating a leaflet, so we kind of do things project based rather than looking at specific kind of topics, if you like. And so when we're creating or doing our e-safety, they're creating a leaflet, so they're having to do research. They're having to obviously use creative software, so Publisher is what we use for this one. And then we've got things like obviously finding and understanding the risks and how to keep yourself safe and so on. So we kind of hit all of those elements. So that's kind of 7, 8, 9 in the national curriculum hitting there. And that kind of lasts about 7 to 8 weeks ish. It depends obviously on how well the students are managing to get through and how much we have to teach them in terms of systems beforehand, obviously getting them logged onto computers and that sort of thing. Then we do an e-commerce unit, so because our faculty has got business studies in there as well, we kind of like to try and show them what it might be like to do that at GCSE as well, and so kind of this is our thinking behind this, but the aim for it is that they then create a website for a makeup business, and so at the moment we do it for a revision business, so they're going to make a website, an online revision type website, and so they look at how businesses work, and that element of it. Looking at being able to create presentations to show that they've got a good business idea and those sorts of things. And so this kind of takes around about a term, so kind of 14 to 15 weeks ish, where we go through and like I said, the end result was they've made a website in there. We then go on to do some algorithms work, and so we use Flowgriffm as one of our languages, if you like. I don't know if anyone's heard of it, but it's a piece of software that lets you create flowcharts that run like a program. The reason that I don't do things like Scratch and that sort of thing is mainly because too many kids see Scratch as a kind of an easy distraction, and so once they get to us, a lot of them will want to spend a lot of the time making the characters and things like that, but Flowgriffm means they have to focus on learning the algorithms and being able to read and write algorithms, and this is kind of where we can then start to introduce Prim with them and use that, and that then takes around about 14 weeks, potentially a little bit longer. We've kind of designed it at the moment so that those that kind of really fly through the algorithms, they really start to get to grips with it. By the end of year 7, they'll start to then introduce Python, and so we might do that for a few weeks towards the end of the year, and that then helps us to then carry on with the algorithms work, but they're then looking at using Python instead in there. Year 8, kind of similar sort of structure with it, so we've still got these kind of generally project-based tasks apart from data representation, which really is kind of on its own. So we look at converting between number bases in there, we look at binary maths, and we look at logic gates and creating logic diagrams and those sorts of things as well. And that's kind of like the first 7 to 8 weeks. We then move on to looking at Python. So this is where everyone will then study their second kind of language, if you like. And Python will be used for kind of 14, 15 weeks, where we'll look at various algorithms, and we'll look at comparing things like, so look at comparing for loops to while loops and why one might be better in certain situations. We'll look at introducing search and sorting algorithms as well in there. Then we move on to do some e-safety with them as well, and so this is kind of tends to tie in ish with the Safer Internet Day, which is kind of why we've kind of plugged it in that place. Again, this is kind of a project, and this is what they started just as we went into lockdown. And so we get them to create a campaign on using the internet in a safer way. And so we get them to kind of do some research into some of the issues and then kind of focus on one of the areas that kind of interest them. So things like some of them might do about online shopping and how you can keep yourself safe in that way, and some might go down looking at gaming and cyberbullying and things like that, and kind of the social media aspects. And kind of the aim there is that they have a client brief that they're trying to meet, and they then have to create a range of different documents. So we get them to create an infographic, a presentation, and a report. And so the infographic is aimed to just be kind of like a poster that can go up around the school to start to advertise it to students. The presentation is something that they then look at creating as though they're going to run an assembly about the topic. And then the report is something that they're designing that it should be able to go out to parents afterwards. And so they've got this kind of scenario that they're working towards with it. And again, that's kind of about 14 to 15 weeks. And then we finish up the year in year 8 with looking at computer systems and how to choose computers, and kind of looking at the different components and what the different terms mean, and looking at networking and things in there. And obviously that's kind of where we've managed to kind of squeeze everything from the national curriculum into our kind of 2 years. We're heading on to a 3-year Key Stage 3 soon though, so that's going to change a little bit, and that's kind of what my next term is going to be about. I think just kind of adapting this and improving it so that it works over 3 years, where we'll probably do a lot more programming in there as well. Make sure there's some more Python in the year 9 part of it on top of that as well. So that's just kind of what we do. I'm not saying that's the best solution at all, but it works with us. I think it gives us quite a varied kind of curriculum that the students can access, and they find various elements of it kind of interesting and that sort of thing. Some other things that I've looked at that potentially might end up going into the new bit is looking at HTML coding. So maybe in year 9 I might get them to make a website again, but actually get them to code it instead of using some web design software that we use. Might be looking at doing some cryptography, so sending secret messages and that sort of thing. We're looking for us probably to do a little bit more budgeting wise, and looking at using kind of spreadsheets a little bit more to do budgeting for various aspects of kind of maybe personal or maybe a business area, but that's potentially something that we might look at. I might look into using some 3D animation. So there's a piece of software called Blender that's quite good for this. It's not something I have used extensively before, so it'll be a little bit of learning for me as well, which makes it a little bit more interesting. I don't know how viable this one is, but it was an idea that I saw in terms of collaborative working, seeing if you can work on a project towards something with another school where there's some resources that have to be worked on together at some point. Video editing we always used to do, but that got taken out. That's something else we could put back in. There's ethics, I think would be quite a good thing to do. I think looking at kind of the ethical uses of computing, and looking at kind of scenarios and getting kind of written work done about that one and research. And there is a scheme of learning one of our other trust schools has kind of put together or found based on the Ready Player One book and film, and looking at how you can use computers kind of more ethically and what's right and what's wrong. And something that I thought kind of ties in a little bit with the kind of diary, if you like, from that we were talking about in Key Stage 1 and Key Stage 2, is looking at digital footprint and getting them to maybe trace their digital footprint and think about where they've been and all the different types of areas that are kind of where they've been and kind of where they've left their data and things like that. So I don't know if anyone's got any thoughts on kind of our scheme of work or what other ideas could be put in and that sort of thing. Then I'd be really happy to hear any of those as well.
I think the digital literacy is good. It's one of my units. So my Key Stage 3, I split into 4 strands because my school work in cycles. So my cycle A is, I've just called it What Are Computers? So in year 7, we look at the components of a computer system. In year 8, we look more at how they work, so like the binary, and then year 10, the data representation comes in there. So year 9. Year 7, for cycle B is all algorithms and programming, and then that consistently goes through. So my 4 strands are what are computers, algorithms and programming, digital citizenship, and then software projects. So obviously the software projects, I can be creative and they can do their Excel, PowerPoint. But digital citizenship, I think this year has been one of the most popular ones. And that I brought into digital literacy and e-safety, but they really enjoy like the case studies. So I use Breck's Foundation. I don't know if you've heard of him. So he was a victim of online grooming and his mum's created a charity. So he actually watched like a short YouTube video and they were so engaged and they created like lots of good resources from that. And then I think if you're going into Key Stage 3, if you're doing it into a 3-year digital literacy, you can then start bringing in cybersecurity as well, which starts really nice for the obviously the year 10 units.
Oh, excellent. No, sounds good.
Can I ask how often you get to teach through the week? What time frame each year group gets, primary and secondary?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, we have in year 7 and 8 we get an hour a week. In Key Stage 4, once they've got their options, we get 2 hours a week.
Right. About primary, anybody?
We're aiming 1 hour a week, about 50 minutes a week.
Sorry?
In primary, we're aiming to try and get 50 minutes a week.
Yeah. Thank you.
I think 50 minutes to an hour a week, I think it's probably the best anyone can really hope for at any key stage.
I think in secondary, so key stage 3, they get an hour a week, but my students love computing. So I did start doing a computing club 1 lunchtime a week, and that's now gone up to 4 lunchtimes a week. So they get extra exposure there. And then we do have what we call almost like a drop down period twice a week, where they can choose different activities to do, and 2 of the activities are computing. So for those students, they get extra as well.
Oh, that's good.
So 1 hour minimum.
Just thinking in terms of things like the video editing and the 3D animation and collaborative projects with other schools. Some things I've seen good sometimes in areas are where things have sort of got a real world outcome and they get to present it to a sort of like a real world audience, or produce like a finalized project that then sort of gets shared. Because in terms of that sort of project side, that brings in sort of those wider skills as well, doesn't it? So just wonder if there's any potential for that really with some of those projects.
Well, there's competitions, isn't there, which you can get involved in as well. So Tomorrow Engineers, their robotics one, and they give you the Lego Mindstorm kits for free. They give you, I think, 2 robots for free, and then I mean, you can only take, I think, 10 students, but you could easily make it like part of your curriculum and then just choose like 10 students, and that's really good because they make a presentation, they look at engineering, and then they obviously build and code the robot.
That's good.
I think there was something BT used to do as well, wasn't there? I know something.
Yeah, it was. I can't remember what it's called now.
But there's a few things like that, aren't there?
Yeah.
Sort of.
No, definitely. I mean, like we kind of the project based. I think it does. We tend to give them something, like I said, with the e-safety for year 8. They've got this client brief they have to try and meet. We do the same with the e-commerce, and I think that tends to work for our students. It does help to motivate them a little bit. They can kind of see that they're not just using the software. There's a reason that they're using the software. I think that definitely does help.
Does anybody use Apps for Good still?
I haven't used it in years.
That's had a big revamp and has got a cyber security type part of it now. But that's got a real audience, and you can connect to a Skype expert and stuff like that.
Oh, brilliant.
What's it called?
Apps for Good.
Apps for Good. I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah.
You've also got the Matrix Challenge if you're looking at cybersecurity. It's a one-off like event a year, where I think they spend like 50 minutes or 40 minutes doing like a website which takes them through different cybersecurity challenges. And the good thing with that is the people that run it can come into your school. So someone that actually works in cybersecurity can do an assembly if you want them to, and kind of like talk about cybersecurity profession and why it's important. And then if you can fit it in your curriculum, like one of the lessons in that week can be them actually engaging in the platform that they set up. And it is a competition as well, so you know, they tend to enjoy it.
Yeah, there's definitely lots of competitions. We do the Beaver Challenge as well, which is similar sort of thing. The kids love doing that one each year. There's the Cyber First Girls one, which is really good for getting more girls into computing. I think since we've kind of started using Prim and the Cyber First Girls, we've gone up to about 30-40% girls in all of our computer science classes, which has been a massive improvement from the 1 or 2 girls that we used to get. No. Has anyone got anything else at all? No. So the final, obviously, part of it really I'm looking to focus on is the Key Stage 4 side of it. I don't like this one because it's so kind of vague really in terms of what's needed. So you've got really 3 different parts: looking at using computers creatively, looking at being able to apply problem solving and computational thinking skills, and looking at how you can use technology safely and those sorts of areas. At the moment, I'm not particularly happy with where we are at Key Stage 4. We have kind of got some of it met, but only for those that choose computing or ICT. So we do computer science, OCR, so you've got component 1 and component 2 in there that kind of meet those different strands easily, but that's a class, so we've got about 30 kids in each year doing it. Then we've got ICT on top of that, so we do the iMedia. Again, that kind of hits most of the strands in there when we're doing it, but again, there's only about 20 to 30 students doing it, so we're hitting about 60 students at best. So there's other aspects that looking at some of the creative side of it where they will get it in other subjects, so PE use PowerPoints and Word documents and things like that. Maths will use some spreadsheets occasionally, and English will use Word and things occasionally, but not really. And so that's kind of my big thing at the moment, is looking at how we can get more of Key Stage 4 to do something that is computing based. So some of what we've been looking at doing is how we can then get everyone else involved in it, and one of the ideas that's been talked about is getting about 6 hours potentially a year to go through things. Potentially I might be able to argue for a little bit more, where they get an hour a week and to do some various computing activities. So some of the things that we've looked at doing is looking at trying to get maybe the core subjects to teach office skills properly. So any of the kind of the creative software and office software and those sorts of things, make sure that when they're using them, that those teachers are trained up to get them to use it properly. So things like searching effectively or saving their work, or those sorts of things can hopefully be taught as they're teaching other areas as well. But then potentially using the time to look at using maybe App Inventor to create a project to get the computing areas in there. Maybe looking at a physical program project. So we've got Lego Mindstorms, we've also got microbits and things like that. So potentially using some of those. Maybe doing some form of web design project with them, or trying to link it in. So this was an idea that we had ages ago, was to link it into some health and social care bits that might potentially appeal to some more or wider range of people. So have a project based around this one. Was the idea was child development, and I've got some resources that I'd look to maybe use for those ones. But I don't know if anyone else thinks they've got a really good way of doing Key Stage 4 computing for all at the moment, or if they've got a good plan in place to carry that forward.
Is it a priority of schools to look at this element?
At the moment, I don't think it is. From the schools, I think some of them where kind of they're starting to panic a little bit more about Ofsted, I think it is starting to become a little bit more of a priority, but I think it's still well down there. I mean, if I had my way, I think every student would have to do computing like an hour a week, a little bit like they have core PE where there's no exams, but they're just learning computing skills. But obviously timetable wise and things like that mean that it won't happen, I don't think, which is something that we're trying to try and persuade. So this is kind of like a balance where we would end up using some of their kind of PSHE time, where we'd look at teaching these or giving them a scheme of work that can then be followed for these particular areas. So I think it needs to be more of a priority, but I don't think it is for a lot of head teachers, unfortunately.
Yeah, previously we've done like years ago, we did like the short GCSE or
Yeah.
even like ECDL to fill the gap and
Yeah,
stuff like
well, I
that.
think ECDL is gone now.
But that's all gone. But
yeah,
and then ICT across the curriculum was a big initiative as well.
Yeah.
That sort of fell flat.
Yeah, I think that the problem is that if there's no exam at the end of it, they generally don't want to know because it's all about points, unfortunately, for us anyway.
I was going to say, I think the thing sort of curriculum-wise, as sort of talked about here, particularly with regard to Austin, is if you've got a vision for it of what you want, computing to look like across the school.
Yeah.
I think it's being able to talk about, it's a bit of a cliche, isn't it? The intent for that vision, about what that vision looks like, and then how far that's implemented. So I think a key part of it is actually being able to articulate and have a plan for what you want it to actually look like, and then how far that's actually implemented. So if there's reasons why, I suppose, there's less of it in Key Stage 4. I remember from years back sort of looking at that cross-curricular model a bit that sort of fell flat, didn't it? But I think there's definitely something in finding the opportunities there, isn't it? And sort of mapping what you want it to look like. So I think sort of being able to articulate that is possibly key. And then where, your plans for, as you talked about, for moving it forward, even if it's not sort of perfect.
Yeah.
Because I think there are, like you say, there are the exam pressures, but then again, it's the balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it's now seen as a foundation subject. I think that's causing some pressure. So one idea that my school have had now is in form time, because they're looking to increase form time to half an hour, is to have, say, 20 minutes twice a week for the year 10s. And even obviously like careers as well is having a huge push. So if, for example, they're making their CV, well, then we'll look into how to use like a document properly, like formatting and stuff. So we're just trying to be creative, but I'm really pushing to get everybody using computers all throughout school education. But obviously there is like the timetable restrictions, as you said.
Yeah. No, I think it's definitely an area I know I definitely want to improve a little bit more, and I think it's a focus. I think it has to be for the kids really, because they're going to be going into these jobs where they're going to have these computers and they're going to need to know how to use them, and some of them may not have used them since they were obviously year 8 possibly, which 12-ish, 13.
That's frightening, isn't it?
It's crazy. I think it'd be much nicer to be able to be in a position where you can offer it, but I think staffing as well plays a big part in it. We're lucky, we've got kind of 3 ICT teachers and computing teachers, but we still don't have enough time for everyone. We've still got some non-specialists teaching ICT, and that obviously has its own issues as well.
It's also the number of devices, I'd imagine. Like, we're lucky, we've got laptop trolleys, which means we've got enough laptops per student. So it's easy for us, say, to introduce every morning 20 minutes of laptop time and every student will be able to have one. But if we just had one computer lab, then that wouldn't work, obviously.
And has anyone got anything else to add at all?
Just resource-wise, for Key Stage 3 and 4, obviously with all this time off now, I've started to make some resources, because something which I'm quite conscious of is having students at home who don't have the technology. So I've made like some unplugged stuff, but I was just wondering what everybody else was doing for students who don't have like a laptop, because I've sent booklets out to some of them, but obviously they're going to be finishing these booklets soon. So what else have you put together?
I mean, for us, most of ours is online. Haven't got that many students, so ours just get a paper copy where possible. So a lot of it is just kind of those kind of unplugged versions, but as much as possible we're trying to get them to do it. Most of them have got a phone, so they can do things like research and those sorts of things on there. And we've managed to get a few laptops out to some students that obviously haven't got technology at home as well. So that's kind of been our way of just keeping them with a computing education if they can. Has anyone else got anything at all? Matt, do you want to do your little bit about your resources now then?
Yeah, sure.
So you should hopefully be able to, if you've got a presentation that you were going to use, be able to share that with everyone else, hopefully.
Yeah, I haven't got a presentation.
Okay.
I just thought I'd come in and
No
chat
worries.
about what we're doing and
Sounds good.
see everybody's thing. But I can point to different websites and stuff like that. Okay, so can you all see the Teach Computing website now on the screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so yeah, I'm a learning manager for Key Stage 4 at the Raspberry Pi Foundation. That's my title, and it's been really interesting listening to everybody today. Like I said, I used to be a teacher for 20 years for computer science, and one of the things that I was a bit, I thought I would find a challenge in this new role is like keeping in touch with the classroom, and these sort of meetings are really, really good for me to see what's going on in schools. So thanks for everything so far. So part of my work and part of the Raspberry Pi Foundation's work is part of the National Centre for Computing Education, the NCCE, and this is the website to go to for everything NCCE stuff. So it's sort of broken down for a good big overview. I don't know how much everyone knows, but the NCCE is a combination of STEM Learning, Raspberry Pi Foundation, and the BCS, the British Computing Society. STEM Learning are very heavily involved in what used to be face-to-face events and computing champions and subject matter experts. I'm sure some of you are. So that all face-to-face stuff is now going to remote delivery. So yeah, you should be getting some stuff through your computing hubs at the moment, and they are also, STEM Learning is also in charge of the computing hubs. Raspberry Pi Foundation, and my role in particular is creating the online CPD. So if you signed up for the Computer Science Accelerator program, which I'll show you in a second, I write to those courses and manage those courses. We also do the resource repository, which I'll show you in a moment, and we also do Isaac Computer Science, which is the A-level resources as well. So teachcomputing.org, this is the homepage where you can look on things like bursaries. So for primary as well, you can get bursaries for attending CPD and things like that. This is all looking under review. Obviously, we've still got like face-to-face events going on, but yeah, you get money basically for doing the courses for primary and secondary. Then if you scroll right to the bottom, we've got resources. So I think a lot of this meeting was about has been talking about resources and what is out there, and sometimes I used to feel that there's too many things, too many resources out there. But part of the NCCE bid, if you like, was to provide resources to cover the entire national curriculum for computing. So this is what we call our resource repository. So you can see the units that are there at the moment. More are being added. So you've got from year 1 all the way up to year 9 at the moment. But by July, there will be units there and resources for GCSE computer science. So everything that you need. So if we go into one of these, it just takes you to Google.
Sorry.
Yeah, go
on. Is there plans to do something based around the kind of Key Stage 4 for all at all, or is it just going to be looking at kind of computer science and aspects?
Not at the moment. It's just computer science.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the whole thing with the NCC is to promote computer science.
Yeah.
So yeah, not for all yet.
Okay. No worries.
But these resources, again, everything is free. It just takes you to a Google Drive. So this is year 5, computer systems and sharing information. I won't go into it now, but you can sign up and look for yourself. So we've got like a different assessment, summative assessment. We've got these learning graphs that we called. And if you go into one of these folders, you've got all the resources there. The slides for each lesson. I mean, so everything is there, and everything's editable for teachers. So you don't have to use it. You may want, depending on what level your ability of your students, you may want to use some in different year groups and see how they all fit into your curriculum. And then we've got our online courses. So if you sign up for, in fact, if you sign up for the primary or secondary courses, you will have to do some of these online courses which are hosted on FutureLearn. So we've got 19 courses online at the moment, varying from like web development, cybersecurity, but they're intended for teachers to do. So this is cybersecurity. So the idea of these is for computer science GCSE teachers to go on and to then get enough knowledge to deliver this in the classroom. And they're all free. So if you sign up for Teach Computing, you can see you go through this process of doing different things and doing face-to-face, well, what used to be face-to-face courses and online courses. Yeah, and then we've also got our Isaac Computer Science, which is the A-level resources, which Martin, you said you use, do you?
Yeah, no, it's found it really useful. I only really started to use it probably this year, but I was using it to set the year 13 students revision homework, if you like, and it was very nice to be able to set homework that just marks itself, and then I just have a look at the results afterwards. Obviously, it hasn't got everything set up at the moment. I think there's a lot of areas where there aren't resources, but I'm assuming those are in development.
Yeah, there's a nice little unit or area at the moment. Actually, I'm not good on the screen, but I'm sure I can search for it. It's the transition materials from year 11 into year 12. So that's really maybe useful for the moment if you still have to set work for your year 11 students. Okay, so I'm not even signed in. This is where, yeah. So I won't log in, but yeah, there is a unit on there that has a transition unit for the topics. Yeah, if you want to give a bit of background with the NCCE, a lot of time at the moment, a lot of resources and people are writing stuff for resource repository, or the resources that we've got to get online by July. So and it's the amount of quality assurance processes that we go through to get our courses and resources online is massive. So yeah, they are really good. They go through checking by us, but then also like for FutureLearn, they have a quality assurance process that they've got to be up to a certain standard. So the feedback that we're getting from all of our stuff that we put on face-to-face and online is that it is really good, and it does what it's supposed to do, and it saves teachers time going to other places, or like test website where I used to find myself searching for ages and ended up making stuff myself and things like that. So yeah, that's sort of what we do, and hopefully we're here to support computer science teachers at this time, but also beyond this as well, with resources, and hopefully stop some perhaps replication of work that's maybe happening at the moment with a lot of computer science teachers. Like you say, I've heard someone say today about creating their own schemes of work and things like that, where you can just dip in and out of this. You don't have to use all of it, you don't have to use any of it. It is there and it's fully funded, so that's why it's been doubly checked about quality.
No, definitely, that sounds good.
But if anyone's got any questions about Raspberry Pi or the NCCE, I'm quite happy to take it. I know there's other CAS community leaders on the course and stuff on the call and stuff like that as well.
Has anyone got anything for that?
How long does it take to sync to your platform? Because I did a face-to-face virtual call thing last week, but it's still saying I've not done any on my dashboard. So when would I expect that to come through?
Yeah, so I think STEM learning's going through a bit of transition with the face-to-face courses becoming remote learning. So I would expect the digital is looking at that at the moment, because it may be still down as like a face-to-face event where actually you probably did it remote. Did you do it for a whole day?
They did it over 2 days, so it was like 11 till 3 on a Thursday and a Friday.
Excellent. So that must have been one of their first ones that they've put over. So yeah, I'll give it a couple of weeks and then contact your computing hub to see if that should have happened.
Sorry, was that Adrian? What was the question that you asked? Because we are doing some of the remote face-to-face now, so I just missed that question you asked.
Oh, I asked how long it took to come up on the dashboard to say that we've done it, because at the moment it's still coming up to say that I've not done any face-to-face courses.
Oh, it's usually about 6 to 8 weeks.
Okay.
And as long as you've completed the evaluation and all of the post gap tasks that you've got as well. And that'll be the trigger.
Has anyone got anything else at all?
And I'll just add as well, I think you mentioned about physical computing a couple of times as well. So the part of the idea was at this period was to put out our physical computing kits into computing hubs. Well, obviously that's had to stop, but the long-term idea, it will happen, is that each hub will be given so many Raspberry Pis and kit and stuff like that for schools to borrow. So if you're in a situation you haven't got many resources, especially physical computing wise, that will be available as soon as we can.
Brilliant. No, that sounds good. So if there's nothing else for Matt, the final thing that I was just going to go through is a couple of the resources that I use and think are useful. These are probably mainly kind of primary based, but there's others as well. So I'm just going to share mine. Second, find the right one. So one of the main ones, and Wendy was talking about it earlier on, is Barefoot. So Barefoot is really useful set of resources, and it's kind of funded by BT and CAS, and there's lots of different organisations, Raspberry Pi involved as well. And it's a little bit like the NCC in terms of their resources. They're all kind of fully vetted, and they're really good quality. And what you can also do once schools are back open is organise for a volunteer or an ambassador to come in and run sessions with you, and look at how you can introduce it and show how it works with your staff. It's something that I do in the local area, but there's loads all around the country. So if you go onto the website, you can request a workshop. But the resources wise, if you head into the where it is now, the resources section, you can search for various bits, whether it's Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2, and so they've got some features bit. But when you go into the resource, you can download just a zipped folder, and that zipped folder has everything that you need on it. It's got the lesson plans, it's got presentations, and it's pretty much good to go. And then you just kind of use it as you need to. You can adapt it, they're all editable. And so if you want to change it, or if you need to change it for differentiation purposes or anything on those lines, you can. And obviously those are some really good resources. But like I said earlier on, some of them really good and can be adapted for older age groups as well. So things like looking at abstraction, so this abstraction unplugged activity is one that I've used all the way up to my A-level classes to talk about how abstraction works and what it actually means. And so even though it's kind of aimed at that age group, I think there's nothing to stop you using it in year kind of Key Stage 3, Key Stage 4, or even Key Stage 5 if you go up that high. One of the other ones that I talked about earlier on is Digital Schoolhouse. So these are workshops where we go in and teach to the students, or the students come to us, and we teach lessons, and it's about kind of 5-6 hours worth, but we can then anything we don't cover within the time. So I normally do a 2-hour session. I leave the resources with the teacher to then carry on their own. So they've kind of had it introduced to them, and then they've seen how it works, and then hopefully they can then carry on with the class. But there are also resources on here and that you can then download as kind of quick activities. So if you're looking at something that you want to give your students in the time off as a quick activity, there's some that you can download and you can access and just give them a quick task that's kind of based around computational thinking and that sort of thing. You can find a list on here, I think it's under the book workshop, of if you find your local schoolhouse. So if you're interested in this at Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2, you can find all of the schools that currently do the workshops, and will come in and either come to you, or they'll get you to come to them to run these workshops. So that's quite a good thing to be able to use. And like I said, kind of if you've got 6 hours worth of things, so that's nearly half a term's worth of work that you can do and get access for free, and then you can share those resources with other people in the school as well if you want to. Obviously another one, hopefully lots of you are familiar with it, is the CAS website. Really good for finding resources like schemes of work and that sort of thing. Obviously these ones are more just made by teachers, so they're not necessarily quality controlled, and so you'd have to have a look through and see whether it is something that is useful for you or not. But there's loads of resources out there that are very useful to go through, and I tend to sign up for emails, and then they'll tell you what resources and highlight some resources each week, and then you can have a look at those. Then the other one, this is Swiggle, the search engine that I was talking about. So you can set this up, and it kind of tries to kind of get rid of any results that aren't suitable for students, but it also looks at obviously giving a little bit of help on what they need to do to then use the website. And like I said, it's based on Google, so the search is fairly comprehensive when you do it, but it's just kind of cutting out some of the bits that are not necessary for the students. And then the other one that I've got is the BT Skills for Tomorrow website, and there's something that looks quite cool at the moment on looking at a robot bakery, and if you go through it, it's got a kind of step-by-step instructions that students can follow and get coding by making cakes and that sort of thing. And they've got some webinars and things on there as well. So there's lots and lots of different things that are useful out there. I don't know if anyone else has got anything else they want to add. So kind of on that note, that's kind of it from me. I'd obviously used up quite a lot of your mornings, but hopefully you found it useful. What I was looking to do in the future is to do one of these for primary school and one of these for secondary school, where we can actually get together and work on schemes of work if people are up for that. I will send out an email with a link on, so that you've got some opportunity to share some ideas with me, and then I'll try and get kind of a summary of all of the resources that everyone's been sharing as well on there on top of that. But thank you for your time. Hopefully you found it useful.
Very, thank you for yours.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Not a problem. So I'm more than happy to hang about for a bit if anyone wants to talk about anything else more specific at all. But I'll stop the recording in a second or so. Was someone going to say something?
So I was just going to say, would the slides from the presentation be available at all?
I will make sure. I will make sure that those are. What I tend to do, so the video, I'm going to make sure there's a link. I normally put it onto YouTube, and so you can have access to it. So I'll put a link, and I will put the presentation as a resource on CAS as well. But I'll make sure that you know where to find it. Obviously, you'll get an email out to you.
Brilliant.
Thanks.
It's been great, Martin. Thank you very
No
much.
problem.
Thank
Thank you for joining.
so much, Martin. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
If I can just remind people about the other courses that are going on this week. So we've got Python programming this afternoon. Tomorrow is the barefoot one, so that's a good opportunity for people who